Okay, we're ready to start today's work session for August 30th, 2018. If we could stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had a little bit of a delayed start today, and we have two council members that are not able to join with us today. Tim Hubbard and Catherine Kent will not be able to join us today. But we are going to start off today's work session. Brian, do you want to come over? Larry, do you have him over there? He can introduce himself from there? Okay, so go ahead, Brian. And this is about oil and gas drilling offshore and some information about that. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. My name is Brian Langloss. Really appreciate your time this morning. As Supervisor mentioned, I'm here to talk about the very current plan to drill in the Atlantic, which does indeed include waters offshore of New York, and something we really need to talk about. I'm also very pleased that I'm accompanied today by a friend. Aaron Virgin is with Group for the East End, and a lot of people out here in Long Island, of course, care about this issue. So with your permission, I'd like to just jump right in, if that's all right.
Yep, and I think part of the reason that Brian reached out to us originally was that some of the towns on the East End are adopting a sense resolution, either in support of this, so this is why we had asked Brian to come and present to us so that we can all be informed if it's something we choose to do. So.
Thank you. So if I may have your attention, please, I'd like to just review a few slides. The reason why we need to protect New York from offshore drilling. In the first place, as I mentioned, my name is Brian Langloss. I'm with Oceana. What is Oceana? We're the largest international organization focused solely on ocean conservation, and of course, offshore drilling is one of the issues that we're working on. Not only stopping the expansion of offshore drilling, but seismic airgun blasting, and we'll discuss this in a moment. As well, there are the offshore drilling issue is not just one issue. It's actually tied up. There are a lot of attacks. There are a lot of, just when you get a tweet and you think that your coastal waters are safe from offshore drilling, you realize there are so many other things that are moving in the direction to bring offshore drilling to your waters, like the Sea Act, which is designed to make it easier to harass marine mammals in order to do seismic airgun surveying. So again, there is actually a lot that is connected, and I'm going to just try to condense all of this today. Additionally, Oceana is working to strengthen the well control rule. You may have heard of the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and when you learn a hard lesson, you should implement those hard lessons, and unfortunately that is not the policy that it looks like we're moving towards federally. A lot of these safety measures are actually under consideration to be stripped. And so with all of this in mind, could we please talk about offshore drilling? Now, so as I mentioned, I'm with Oceana. I am myself from the area affected by the BP Deepwater Horizon. I'm from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. That is my grandfather's shrimp boat. When I was a little boy, my grandmother's name was Shirley Rose. This is a very old picture, long before people had a smartphone. I know I look like I'm 21, but I'm actually 29, and this is a very long time ago when you saw a lot of boats like this. Up and down the coast, people lived off of shrimping. People also lived off of, they had restaurants and hotels because people wanted to come see the life on our water. And this was the way life was until about 2010. 2010 is when the BP Deepwater Horizon spilled over 200 million gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. And just to try to give you some metrics as to how that impacted the coastal economy of the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, in 2009, the year before the BP Deepwater Horizon, Mississippi's Gulf Coast harvested approximately 400,000 sacks of oysters. And after the BP Deepwater Horizon, the very best season produced scarcely 78,000 sacks of oysters. So that's just talking about oysters, but there are so many other types of industries that are impacted, other types of fisheries, restaurants, hotels. All told, $8.7 billion. That is the price tag of the BP Deepwater Horizon oil disaster by approximately 2020. That's what we're expecting it to cost, all said and done. Approximately 22,000 jobs vanished that had previously depended on tourism and fishing. So there wasn't just the cleanup of the oil. In order for these coastal towns to make people realize it's safe to eat our seafood, you can come to our beaches, the hotel's beach won't have oil in it. The local towns had to dish out money, a lot of it, to try to repair the reputation of their local tourism economy. So that is why I myself am very attached to this issue. And again, I thank you for hearing me today. A very quick review, please, of offshore drilling. Let's look at the pros and let's look at the cons. New York's clean coast economy is worth approximately $39 billion. So we do owe it to ourselves to again, address the pros and cons. If drilling were to commence under the current BOEM, that's the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, their draft proposed program, the amount of oil that they're looking to recover based on current rates of use would be about 10 days. And gas, again, based on current rates of consumption, approximately 8 days. In order to recover 10 days worth of oil and about 8 days worth of gas, we would be jeopardizing in the state of New York alone $39 billion in New York State's GDP. How did we come up with this? You should all have a handout that explains how New York's clean coast economy, of which fishing, ocean recreation, and tourism contribute heavily, this all brings in, from places like Riverhead, altogether the state of New York brings in $39 billion from its coast. So just on a basic cost-benefit analysis, this is not a good business deal. This is not a good plan. If I may also unpack for a moment, please, what is the plan that we're talking about? Because this plan to lease offshore sites actually comes up on a pretty routine schedule. So if I may please just review this very quickly. The current plan that we're talking about proposes the largest number of potential offshore leases ever offered by any president. We are talking about 90% of the total outer continental shelf acreage of the United States. Almost all 25 of the 26 outer continental shelf planning areas are up for consideration. We're talking about drilling that could commence in potentially 47 separate lease sites. So this includes all U.S. waters, and a point I would please like to make is that regardless to what is tweeted, regardless to what people might have heard about other projects that might be underway, New York's waters are definitely on the current draft proposed program. The North Atlantic planning area, all of it is in this current version. So the kind of energy, that's the vision of the plan. The energy that's being put into this plan is very much polluters first. Put polluters first. That's why the Marine Mammal Protection Act is being stripped. That's why the well control safety regulations are being weakened. It is very much, all of this plan, every way you look at it, is designed to put polluters first. And of course, we have something else to say about that. This is what the current DPP looks like. You see that there's not just one, there are two planning zones in the North Atlantic that have potential to impact New York and the value of New York's $39 billion clean coast economy. So even if, let's say, New York State passes a law that makes offshore infrastructure too expensive and just in other ways prohibitive to do business offshore of New York, an oil spill in the Atlantic offshore of Virginia could impact New York. Offshore of Maryland could impact New York. We're on the eastern seaboard. We're susceptible to severe weather events like hurricanes and nor'easters, which come up the eastern seaboard. So we're not talking about just New York waters. We are indeed talking about those two red areas that you see, the two planning zones in the Atlantic on the upper right side that really could impact New York. A quick review of the timeline of events, please, because as mentioned, this comes up. This plan to review the outer continental shelf leasing sites, it comes up regularly. It's a routine thing that comes up. You may have heard of it because very recently in 2016, President Obama was forced to remove areas in the Atlantic from consideration. So it was not until April 2017 that the current administration issued an executive order to aggressively pursue offshore oil drilling, including restarting the 5-year program. And this is a planning process that, again, had just been completed at the end of President Obama's administration. In January 4th of 2018, BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, they released the current draft proposed program. And that's the map I just showed you and the documents and the plans and all the lease sites that are up for grabs. Now, the acting director of BOEM is Walter Cruikshank, and he testified in January that no formal decision yet is made on what's in or out of the 5-year program. This was in reference to comments that were made about Florida being taken off the plan. Again, we can't go by tweet. We really have to go by what is in an actual piece of policy document. And as of right now, everything is up for grabs. So who makes the decision on offshore drilling? States have limited control, as well you know. States have control from the shoreline out to 3 nautical miles of their coastal zone management jurisdiction. Beyond that, the federal government owns the seabed and all of its mineral resources. So that's the extent to what states can do. Beyond the states, it's really up to private individuals and local communities to let the Department of the Interior, specifically Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke, know, do not drill here. It is important to let the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management know, do not drill here. And it's important to let the President and Congress know, do not drill here. And that is why a resolution that could be passed by Riverhead and sent to Secretary Zinke, to Dr. Cruikshank, and to the President and to our members of Congress could really achieve something that is not only important ecologically, but it's actually built into the way our system of democracy works. This is how we identify, we know who makes our decisions, and we let them know what we need to happen. Because again, we cannot rely, even if the state were to pass something, we're only talking about 3 miles. If the BP Deepwater Horizon was almost 50 miles off the coast of Louisiana, even further off the coast of Mississippi, and still had a terrible impact. So we really need to directly influence Washington. More about where we are in the process. So by statute, offshore oil and gas lease sales are decided by BOEM. So that's why, again, it is very important for us to escalate our opposition to this plan directly to BOEM. Lease sales are planned in a 5-year oil and gas leasing program. As mentioned, this is the 5-year program that we're opposing right now. Establishes the area to be leased as well as the leasing schedule. So again, we need to make sure they establish do not lease offshore sites in those 2 Atlantic planning areas. Several stages of the processes are to be followed by comment periods. And if I may, I'm going to go to the screen just to show you where we are in the adoption of the 5-year plan. When first proposed, when the executive order came out that we were going to look into the 5-year plan, then the draft proposed program came out in January of this year. That's when there was that was when Representative Engelbright had the hearing in Smithtown in February. That is when Congressman Zeldin had another hearing out here on Long Island. This is where we are right now.
And they were both opposed to the offshore
Yes,
drilling.
thank you very much, Supervisor. They were both opposed, correct. And we are right now coming towards the end of the draft proposed program. The proposed program is right now, possibly this very minute, being discussed at the Department of the Interior, at the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and the proposed program is going to say this is what we think we should do. As of right now, the proposed program, their plan to drill, that is based on the draft proposed program, which absolutely includes waters that influence New York's clean coast economy. So we are expecting the proposed program to drop in November. It is much easier to influence a decision to be removed from the 5-year program when it's part of the draft proposed program, as opposed to waiting for November when the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management have already committed it to the proposed program. So it is very, in terms of time frame, we are anticipating November to be the release of the proposed program. So I just wanted to point that out, that's where we are. Because it seems like this conversation has been taking a long time, and people want to know, well, wait, what did we do in February? In February, that was the public comment period for the draft proposed program. They are going to make the decision on that, and February was a long time ago. Certainly with the way things move today.
When did they first start this discussion about offshore drilling? Like, when did this first sit down and they started working on the draft 5-year plan? Because it didn't just happen from January through February until now. It must have started way back when.
Correct. That was in the summer of 2017 with President Trump's executive order.
Wait, but you said the executive order was to restudy the draft plan. So And you mentioned that it was also studied under the Obama administration where parcels
Oh.
were removed. So when did it initially start?
Thank you so much for your question. I understand what I left out now. The 5-year program is actually, it's this ongoing, it's kind of built into the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management's to-do list. Regardless of who's president or who, every 5 years, they say, what are we doing for oil? What are we doing for energy, national energy policy? So instead of it being a blanket decision that is forever, or a short decision that can only take place in like 1 or 2 years, a 5-year plan is something that every administration will deal with, whoever the Department of the Interior, Secretary of the Interior is. A 5-year program comes up about every 5 years. And it's what that program looks like and what is going to go into it depends on the administration. So what happened, and thank you for making this clarification, that is an ongoing theme. The United States government will always look at a 5-year program. It's always broken down into 5 years because they want to see how much energy do we need, what do we need to do, what are the risks, and it is up to us to influence that decision. The current 5-year program is a bit of a surprise because we just went through this with the last administration. So this current 5-year program was reactivated by executive order in summer 2017.
But you're saying that that occurs every 5 years, no matter what anyway, correct?
But the last 5 years.
This is the first time an administration has come in and said, you know what, we're gonna ignore the previous administration and we're gonna start the process over.
Okay, but I didn't hear that it was ignoring the previous administration and by executive order, we're gonna start the process all over again. What I heard was that there was a plan, there was a 5-year plan to do offshore drilling and that there were, in 2016, the Obama administration removed areas.
Yes.
So what areas did they remove?
The
And was the
Atlantic and
coast
the
of
Arctic.
Long Island one of them?
Yes, it was. The Atlantic, thank you for asking this. I'm going to back up, please, to my map, and I think that this might help me answer your question. So, under President Obama, the 5-year plan, local constituents and local communities were able to influence the 5-year plan to exclude the Atlantic planning regions, as well as regions around the Arctic. That was all excluded in 2016. What Aaron is saying that despite a gigantic public comment process that solicited thousands and thousands of public comment that said, do not drill in the Atlantic, which created a federal level decision in 2016, that decision was completely ignored, and an executive order was issued in 2017 to say, let's look at everything all over again, even though we just went through the process of saying, where do we and do we not want to look for drilling? So I think that is what Aaron's saying about the reversal occurring last summer.
But let me just add this though, we're still in the Obama administration's planning, 5-year planning period until the Trump administration's 5-year plan moving forward is approved.
So we're still in the 5-year planning period for the Obama administration. Obama administration removed the whole Atlantic Ocean areas for studying. And then, so the West Coast is still, it's okay to
The
drill
West Coast
there?
was never even in play, and it probably never will be in play. It's a whole other story. To drill on the West Coast is not even practical. And that's a whole other story.
So you're saying,
Andreas Fault. I mean,
so
this thing out here
essentially,
is California would fall in it.
what you're saying is that you don't want any drilling anywhere, right?
We oppose expanded drilling, and thank you for asking this, because you'll notice there are 2 areas that are in yellow, and those areas are currently in production for oil. Those areas, when you hear about America now exporting rather than importing energy, those yellow areas are currently part of that happening. The areas that are red are completely unnecessary. We do not need to expand offshore drilling for a variety of reasons. One of which is that we have very important and viable and very valuable clean coast economies that must be taken into consideration when we also consider what we need to do for the oil industry.
So, just another question is, how much oil are we actually, are we self-sustainable with our oil that we have right now, or are we importing a lot of oil from other countries, and what's the percentage of what we're producing within the United States versus what we're importing from other countries? such as the Middle East?
That's a really, you would have to ask someone way smarter than I am, because that's a very big question.
It's like
I don't
you know-
have the exact numbers that you're looking for, but we're exporting more than we're importing.
Yeah, the numbers just flipped very recently on
They-
that. I don't know what the
we
total
are
numbers are, but the
exporting.
numbers flipped.
But I do want to point out that what is recoverable is not worth it. Even if we were to open up the entire United States outer continental shelf with current rates of consumption, we're talking about approximately 2 years worth of oil. So that is not worth it, not worth the risk to, again, pretty substantial billions and billions of dollars of GDP that is derived specifically from fishing, ocean recreation, and coastal economies that are already there. They don't need to, they're not hypothetical oil economies that need to be planned for and built. They're already there producing economic benefit that must be protected.
Well, I think the 5-year plan is because, I think we're slowly weaning ourselves off of oil. We're trying to get a cleaner energy. We're trying to find alternative energy, so we're not using crude oil. So I think the 5-year plan is so that we can wean ourselves off, not expand it, so.
Precisely. It's very modular, and that's actually the kind of the beauty of the 5-year plan is that it is modular and that it is up for review. But we just reviewed this in 2016, and many, many Americans participated in that review process and said, do not expand offshore drilling. And ignoring that, the current administration opens, Pandora's box. We would like to open all of the United States, about 99% of the outer continental shelf for drilling, which again is basically saying, I didn't hear anything that just happened in 2016.
So is it the recommendation of the BOEM to the president to open up these areas for offshore drilling?
We
Or
will
is that
find-
a unilateral decision?
We will find out in November what their recommendations are, but the Secretary of the Interior is the person who will set the policy.
BOEM, B-O-E-M, is a part of the interior.
So they're the ones that make the recommendations as to where we should and what the sustainability is and what
They
we're,
are doing the legwork, yes.
they're doing the legwork.
But I think part of what that public comment period in the previous 5-year plan, having restarted that, they're having the current, they haven't made a recommendation for the 5-year plan. So what this discussion is about is, does the town of Riverhead want to put its sense in before the plan goes through, as just a sense of the town? That's
Just
really
out of
what it's
curiosity,
about
where
in
do
the
our,
decision making.
well, I know that Congressman Zeldin is against offshore drilling off the coast of Long Island. Where are our state representatives as far as Gillibrand and Schumer?
Both opposed.
Both opposed? Okay, so,
Ken LaValle, I believe.
Senator Lavalle's opposed, both Assemblyman Palumbo and Thiel are opposed.
okay, so this is just a sense
Congressman
resolution
King
to
has
support
not
them.
really come in and said he's for or against, if you wanna go up that way, and then I think, Congressman,
I can give some updates.
yeah,
on-
actually,
Yeah, Congressman, thank you. Congressman King is opposed to drilling offshore of New York. You correctly stated that Zeldin is opposed to offshore drilling offshore of New York, but he is also opposed to drilling in the Atlantic, generally speaking, not just New York. Congressman Zeldin is also opposed to seismic air gun blasting. And Congressman Dan Donovan, the 11th District, which is Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn, is also opposed to drilling offshore of New York. So it is a pretty consistent opposition.
Has anybody come out for it?
Not publicly.
I think it's probably easier to go that way than the other one.
at the two hearings that we both attended and testified at, Engelbright's hearing and Lee Zeldin's hearing, not one single person spoke in favor of drilling or in studying or in seismic testing. And that was over 300 people combined.
Okay.
So this is a pretty, I don't wanna say unanimous issue, I mean, but it is, and it's a
Sounds like
nonpartisan issue.
Well, the bottom line, if we're taking in enough, if we're taking in so much that we're exporting it, why do we need to drill more? I mean, that's.
And it puts our coastline at risk. I mean, it puts our economies, in Riverhead
so
here,
does
very
my
much
boat.
at risk.
Well, I like to compare it to Broadwater about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Broadwater, this is Broadwater on
Oh, I remember
steroids.
that, yeah, right.
Yeah, and that was such a horrible thing, it
That was
benefited
more
a
than 10 years
few.
ago. It was like 15 years.
15 years ago, you're right. And so, this is, we could have oil rigs right off the whole, ocean coastline, which the impacts, as we know, water knows no political boundaries. And so if there's damage done, we're all in the same boat.
So the $414,000 jobs that would be lost those are jobs in the, tourism industry,
Fishing,
I presume?
fishing, tourism, and ocean recreation. And there are services that support those, like maintenance for boats and vehicles, insurance, things like that.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
more upset about the oysters myself.
Yes, yeah, me too.
Has that recovered?
You know
It
what's,
went from 400,000 to 78,000 2 years later, or actually, we don't have a date when it went to 78,000.
it, 78,000 was, I believe, 2013. I'm not exactly sure which year that was, but that was the best. That was the best they did after this bill, and it hasn't been much better than that. Do you know what is actually the most unpleasant and most unfortunate thing is that even though things have cleared up and they're trying to get well, you know, BP was, that was almost 8 years ago, people still, for example, there are two different oysteries on the Gulf Coast where I'm from. One is Lake Pontchartrain, and one is the Pasquichan Oyster Reef. The Pasquichan Oyster Reef is in the Gulf. Lake Pontchartrain, there was no oil in Lake Pontchartrain. So all the local restaurants, if you're not serving Lake Pontchartrain oysters, no one wants to buy your oysters because everyone just automatically assumes now that Lake Pontchartrain is the only place where you can get clean and safe oysters. So even regardless to the ecological damage to the oyster beds themselves, and aside from the huge sums of money that were necessary to clean up that ecological damage, and then the additional money that it took to sustain people who lost days of work and their restaurants were closed, they also have had to embark on ad campaigns to say, come back, we're safe. You know, it's, and this is on a very business by business, it's bad for local businesses. It's bad for small businesses to have to not only suffer a loss, like being closed for a very long time while the oil is being cleaned up, but then to have to fight back to get your business back is it's quite a disadvantage to small businesses and to local communities.
Yeah, it was devastating watching the news years ago and watching all the small business owners having to
Absolutely.
close up during the biggest
It really
tourism
was.
season, just as we were entering the biggest tourism season, so.
And especially damaging was that it was so sad to see so much money had been invested in the Gulf Coast after Hurricane Katrina to specifically try to shore up these industries. So it was really hard to see that investment as well take such a hit because they happen, you know, so close to each other.
It's the aftermath that you don't realize, you know, you have the one event, and then once it goes away, you're still just struggling and struggling and struggling, and, you know, the small businesses are devastated.
That is
I mean,
true.
You can't, many don't recover.
And if I may invite you, please, to the aquarium on Sunday, September the 16th at 2 p.m. I'll actually be showing a documentary. It's only 45 minutes, don't worry, it's nice and short. But in the documentary, several constituents from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi and Louisiana impacted by the BP Deepwater Horizon are interviewed, including representatives of the Houma tribe who traditionally have subsisted on shrimping and fishing, taking their boats out. And just to really see this family interviewed and to see them on their boat, but the boat is not out in the water because they can't take it out because they're not making enough money to take it out anymore. And this is how they make their money. It just it makes everything so much smaller for those people and all of their options so much smaller. And again, that's the type of thing that it's not just as simple as cleaning up a mess. There is the aftermath that then needs to be
Well,
cleaned
it's not
up.
only the local businesses, and I realize the impact it made on those communities, but you have to look at it more globally. What about the sea life? What about the whole balance in the ocean as far as the dam? I mean, is that ever repairable? I mean,
That's a very big question.
I mean, I can't imagine the sea life, the plant life, everything that died or was affected by that for probably hundreds of years that we don't even know about yet.
And another thing that, not to be too depressing, but we live, we live on planet Earth, which is basically a really shiny marble that shares an atmosphere and that shares certain hydrology and shares other functions that mean that a spill in one part will absolutely impact an area that may not have had oil on their shores. So it is very important to remember, like Aaron said, that state boundaries when it comes to the water, that doesn't really help us because oil does not observe a political boundary in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is connected, and we have to keep that in mind as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I please just take one moment to touch on another topic that is directly related to offshore drilling. Offshore drilling cannot begin without seismic airgun blasting. And this is also another really, really detrimental practice that has the potential to impact New York's valuable clean coast economy. Seismic airgun blasting, what is it? It is how the oil companies search for oil and gas deposits on the ocean floor. And you know, actually, I'll just show you a picture. Ships will drag behind it a large array consisting of these individual sonic air guns. The air guns would then, as you see in the diagram, the air guns shoot a noise down to the ocean floor that is so loud that the echo of that noise coming back to the ship actually provides enough data on where is the oil. There are a lot of things in between the oil and the ship. There are fisheries, there are sensitive ecosystems, there are marine mammals. Marine mammals have eardrums, just like we have. And seismic airgun blasting is a terrible, terrible practice that we really need to fight. So why does this matter? Again, the seismic airgun surveys, this is the precursor to offshore drilling. If there's no seismic surveying, there's no offshore drilling. The air guns create one of the loudest man-made sounds in the ocean. They're fired every 10 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for weeks to months on end. And if I could just demonstrate why, it's not like with a windmill, where you want to site the windmill here. So the seismic airgun takes one impression and says, now we have a map here. They don't know where the oil is. They have to drag indiscriminately. They're on a treasure hunt. They have to drag these these ships and these huge nets and this terrible sound. They drag it all over the ocean to see if they can find something. That is very wasteful, incredibly wasteful.
Where are you on offshore wind?
That is another topic. We're pretty
For another
favorable.
day.
We're pretty favorable though, but
Okay.
if I may just stay on seismic airgun
Yes,
surveying.
go ahead.
These blasts, let's say for a moment that we really care about our marine life, which I assume we all do. It's very devastating. They disturb, injure, and kill marine life. They've depopulated commercial fisheries. Seismic airgun surveys have also disrupted coastal economies because of that. For whales and dolphins, which rely on their hearing to find food, to communicate and reproduce, being able to hear is a life or death matter, and so this puts them in great peril. Airgun blasts kill fish eggs and larvae and scare away fish from important habitats, which again, let's say that we don't care about the fish and the animals, we care about our fishermen and our fishing economy. Following seismic surveys, catch rates of cod and haddock declined by 40 to 80% for thousands of miles of an impacted area. Seismic permit areas can overlap. And as I mentioned, with this with the new super 5-year program that came from the current administration recently, we're also seeing a lot of accessory efforts to put polluters first. One of those, again, is the SEA Act, which would make it easier to get these permits and not have a mitigation strategy in place for the marine ecosystem, which is very fragile and which contributes to our clean coast economy.
And they can do that starting 3 miles offshore?
Correct. They don't have the permits yet.
But that would be the availability for them 3 miles offshore if it was
Yes.
the plan as is to go through?
Correct.
When was the Sea Act adopted?
It hasn't been. It's currently up for consideration.
Oh, so it's never the Streamlined Environmental Approvals Act, is that what it is?
Correct. And that
It's in committee, I wanna say,
it's moving. It's certainly moving along, but it hasn't been adopted yet. That's why we're scared about it, because it is very imminent. It is a very imminent threat to our clean coast economy.
So that is something that would follow any decision that's made by,
they do go hand in hand.
Yeah, you have to do the seismic testing, otherwise we can't
no,
drill
but by
anymore.
the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management recommendations. So then would come the Streamlined Environmental Approvals Act.
There's a couple moving pieces. You can actually approve leases for oil and gas.
Just for the microphone in.
You could, what the administration's trying to do, and really Congress is as well, is they're trying to open up a lot of these leasing areas for exploration, even before the 5-year plan is finalized. We're waiting for that any day. that could happen. If that happens and this act comes in, you don't have to do a 60-day review process. You don't have to involve the public. The transparency kind of goes out the window. That's where streamlining comes in.
Got it.
And that's what is kind of scary, because, you know, there's a lot out there. And also what's out there, you brought up wind just a minute ago, there are also leases for different companies to put up wind turbines. We're looking at one off Martha's Vineyard, there's the one off Montauk, of course, with Deepwater. And so there's a lot of things that are going to be impacted by different pieces of legislation. It could get very, very crowded out there, I guess, is the only way to put it.
And part of this sense resolution does, for the seismic testing is included in here, and
So this is a standard sense resolution that's been drafted for all the towns to consider?
yes.
This is East Hampton's right here.
Okay. Which is the same as this? Or-
It's very similar,
The
yeah.
first town on the east end to approve a reso. Southampton followed. Town of Brookhaven did something very similar. It was really Supervisor Romaine wrote a letter and it was supported. It wasn't an official resolution. From you guys now, Southold.
Just once again with the microphone, I'm sorry, sorry about that.
Southold, we're with you all now. Southold, we're trying to get on their calendar, and Shelter Island will wrap it up. But then, of course, you just mentioned the governor has signed a bill basically saying we don't want this and we're going to fight it. And the governor has gone as far to say if something is approved, we'll fight it in the courts. So.
Why don't you hold on to that, since I have this one? Thank you.
There's gotta be a better way than the seismic blasting. I mean, with technology today, I mean, I don't like it when a car goes past my house and my windows rattle. I can't imagine swimming around in a habitat.
And imagine if the car goes by and not only did your windows rattle, but your garden died
Yeah, right.
and your bank account went to
And
zero.
I
That
got
would,
oysters. I can't,
yes.
I can't deal. There's gotta be a better way.
So that is my presentation for you today. And again, I just really thank you for your questions and for your time. Any other questions? Any unresolved, lingering curiosities that we should discuss?
No, I think, Brian, I think this was really informative, and Aaron, thank you very much for
The
coming.
time is short though, you're talking November. This
Yeah.
is September almost. Right, so we
At
gotta
the
be-
earliest, it will be November. The federal government's been known to push things back a little bit,
Well-
although this administration's been very aggressive, so we're not anticipating
Yeah, I know how
they're gonna
government
delay
works,
this
believe me.
either.
And to tell you the truth, the
Let's play
seismic
plans.
permits, we have been waiting for those for a while, and those have not been released yet. So November isn't so much a
Drop dead
end date as it is just something to be mindful of. That's when we're expecting the draft proposed program to become the proposed program, which definitely makes this a little bit more.
But there's still a comment period
There will be indeed, yes, sir.
on that too, so, although it can be, okay.
Who makes the decision to remove these areas from the program?
That would be the Department of the Interior under
Okay.
Secretary Zinke,
Area.
Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, and
Got it.
yes.
Thank you.
And that's why, that's the value, because you two just actually both brought up questions that are very complementary to each other. Public comment periods are very helpful, but they're usually conducted on BOEM's terms, and in their, that's, for example, we were a little upset when originally the public comment period in New York back in February was held in Albany, because who in Albany knows that much about New York's clean coast economy and the value of it? So that's why we were very thankful for our local leaders who appeared on February the 14th at Smithtown at the hearing that Englebright held to enter this comment into the public record. So a resolution would be almost like our own public comment, our way of speaking directly to the decision maker on our terms and saying, you must consider that we represent the town of Riverhead and our economy is too important for us. We must be, the Atlantic planning region must be taken out of consideration.
So our statistics, I mean, obviously statistics are helpful as far as the economy and what actually affects our area. Have any surveys been done to our local business owners here as how this might affect them?
Not in Riverhead specifically. The research that I printed out for you was conducted by Oceana over a very extended period of time and is very specific to New York's economy,
Okay.
Clean Coast economy, which is essentially Long Island.
Okay, thank you.
We might be able to get some of the numbers from Discovery Long Island as far as tourism goes and
Yeah.
what the numbers are generated out here. I know they do collect some of that,
I'm
so,
sure the South Shore would be,
um,
I don't think we have,
so we'll see if we can get some of those numbers for more of a local, information.
And I'll do my homework. I'll be sure to check out some more, some more local numbers myself
Okay, that'd be
and
good.
get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
presentation.
I think you got support for the resolution, so.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that, and let's protect New York's Clean Coast economy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You've done this presentation before.
This is actually my first time to do this.
Oh, get out of here.
It is.
You did very well.
Thank you.
So we shall move on. I thought that Brian had come to see me, but I think that having it presented to the board was important for us to be able to get a sense of what everything was about.
Well, education is always very good, not only for us, but for members of the public
And
who will
for
be
me.
reviewing this broadcasting. So we appreciate the supervisor bringing it to us on this occasion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
And it's
you.
very helpful for me to also hear your questions and to know where your concerns are. So thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the next item on our agenda. This is the renaming for Lewis Street. When we had for Dashawn Briggs, we did an honorary renaming of the street. The family, has requested and to do a permanent renaming of the street, but that does we did contact, some of the, speaking with Anne Marie, there are some issues involved with it, so what we would like to do is get a sense from the board, about sending a letter out to the neighbors that are on the block for a street change, because it does require some things as far as like your license and your mailing address and things like that if the name of the street is changed, permanently. So this is just a letter we would like to send out to the neighbors on the street, to kind of get a sense of how they would like to respond. So I just wanted the board to look that over and
Yeah, I don't mind
Copy of
get-
your
I don't-
letter? That's it.
I don't mind getting input from the neighbors. I'd certainly like to know, go back in history and find out when that whole development was created back in the early fifties, I believe. Those streets were named for a reason.
Okay.
I don't know who Doris and Lewis and Wilson and
Okay.
Moline and why those names came from, or whether they were local people, or whether it was just the developer's family name, I don't know. But if there's no significance to Lewis, I have no problem.
Okay.
I mean, if all the people on Lewis Street don't mind, but it's really, you gotta change your checking account, you gotta change all your information
Oh,
on
that's,
all your.
but that's pretty minor.
Well, that's why we'll send the letter out.
You're basically moving to a different address. But it's
I
up to the
wouldn't mind
people on
renaming
Lewis
every
Street
street
as to
then,
whether or not
actually.
they want it.
Correct, so if everybody
Sure.
has a chance to look at the letter, and just let me know if you're okay, with sending that out and moving forward. And now we can move on to resolutions.
Already?
Yeah,
Oh, my goodness gracious.
that's it, small in the front.
I guess I gotta go get my computer.
You wanna go get that first? You wanna
Nah.
share too, or?
I'll share. There's only 15 resolutions anyway, right? 32, which means there'll be about 70 by the time Tuesday rolls around. Wednesday, right? Wednesday?
Wednesday it will be, yes.
On this letter, I think that we should give people at least 30 days to respond to this.
Ooh, can I go into your personal email in here? Look how big that is. This is much bigger than yours.
It is. September 5th, so it's only.
Guess it helps when you have the bake with the checking account, I guess, huh?
Okay, we ready?
Yes.
The first one. First one is authorize attendance of an assessor at seminar. 2 is grants excavation importation permit as provided by chapter 229 to Salvador Curatolo at 513 Peconic Bay Boulevard, Aquabog, Suffolk County Tax Max 687-2-002. I think you guys had all received an email
Yes,
about
from
this
the
one.
senior building inspector, yes.
3 is reclassifies the titles of a head clerk. This is a couple of titles through the Suffolk County Civil Service. They're eliminating some of the titles and changing them over. This is no change to salary, it's just a designation of the name.
Who's changing? Whoa.
They're changing the title, head clerk, will no longer exist, that job title, and it's being changed to chief office assistant. So
So
the
you're just changing title, the civil service is doing this?
Suffolk County, Department of Civil Service
Okay.
is eliminating some titles and rolling them into different names. Yeah. And this one is
To
reclassifies.
confuse everybody.
Yeah. Reclassifies the title of a principal clerk, and this would be a principal office assistant, it's changing.
Doesn't change our groupings?
Nothing changes, internally, it's just a name change. 5 is ratifies the appointment of a temporary part-time laborer, this is, in connection with, bid for downtown.
Yeah, and it would be helpful, we have some signs that are still lingering on Main Street that say Alive on 25, and even though the event is over, like hanging from the light posts on West Main Street, and then also in some of the windows on the storefronts downtown, so.
Okay, we'll send that out to the bid to ask them to remove. 6 is ratifies authorization for the supervisor to execute an agreement. This is
Retraining?
retraining for, bus drivers. 7 is ratifies the appointment of a senior, citizen aide. This is somebody that we had as a,
Temporary.
temporary that will convert over to a permanent with a, with somebody that resigned. 8 is ratifies the appointment of,
Sarah, and we wish her
Yep.
good health.
ratifies the appointment of a part-time court officer. 9 is authorize the oh my God, I can't talk today. Authorization
Lube.
to publish advertisement for bid for lubricant items.
Yeah, man.
10 is order calling a public hearing pursuant to section, 202-B of the town law regarding budget increases for the improvements to facilities of Riverhead Sewer District for a proposed fuel facility sewer main relocation at 841 Old Country Road.
Okay.
11 is declare personal property, police department pump out boat surplus obsolete and authorizes a sale to the village of Greenport.
They wanna pump that boat?
Yes, they do.
All right.
12 is awards bid for Town of Riverhead Police Department Accident Report Retrieval Service. This is, Chief, do you wanna just come up for this one for a second?
Retrieval services.
Makes more sense than having staff do it in the office.
Do you wanna just explain what this is? There's a fee attached to this, and then there's a question about an administrative, fee. I know that you had negotiated with them a little bit more.
Correct, we sent this out for RFP, so we got back only the one bid,
Uh-huh,
and that was for, CrashLogix or LexisNexis.
Okay.
And it's $8 basically that they would receive. We might wanna hold off on this though, because the county has an agreement with them that the charge is only $4. So, the county got a hold of LexisNexis and said, what are you doing? So, they have agreed to lower ours to $4. I emailed Anne Marie this morning to figure out what we had to do as far as changing the bid or whatever, or the,
okay.
RFP.
Well,
So
we
I haven't
can-
heard back from her yet.
So once we hear back from her, we'll email that out to everybody, and everybody's okay with it, then we'll continue to move forward with it.
Good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the county put it out for an RFP and then got that number in, so it should be on the contract, the county contract, no? that number?
That I don't know.
Well, we
had
didn't
to
know
go
we were
out
only
for
gonna get, we didn't know we were only gonna get one response back
That's
also,
right.
so.
Yeah, so we could just
Yeah,
pull
we
them
don't
off
only-
the county contracts, probably. Okay.
Thank you for coming up
Thank you.
here, Mr. Waitcher.
No problem. Anytime.
13 is resolution, this is, up to the board, resolution to change evening town board meeting
Why?
times. This would be to change it till 6 o'clock, from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
For the rest of the year, why?
I would wanna have a public hearing on this, because there's a lot of people that can't make it here by 6, that
I don't
work
think
up
we need a
west,
public
that would
hearing
like
for
to be here.
No, I mean, what was the
The-
nexus?
The impetus was this, is that at 7 o'clock, just to see if 6 o'clock more people will come, because 7 o'clock in the evening, especially when you get towards the winter time, a lot of people are saying it's difficult to get out, most people are done with work by 5:30, and a lot of people say when they go home and they sit down, they don't wanna come back out again, so we wanted to see if 6
Yeah.
o'clock. Yeah, so in an effort to have more people come and
Exactly.
participate, we would like to try and do it at 6 o'clock it would just be for 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings to do out the rest of the year, and then if it does turn to work out well, then we can make a decision in January whether to go back to 7 o'clock or to stay with the 6 o'clock.
The only thing I mean, to me, I don't really care, but, I think in the winter months, I think you're right, cause it's dark by 4:30, so I mean, by 7 o'clock, you're ready to.
Take a nap?
Taking that. So I see in the winter months, it might be a good idea to have a little earlier than 7 o'clock, but I'm just worried about,
Yeah, during the summer when it's daylight, you're getting off the beach at 4 instead of
I
5 to make a
have
town
a
board
kid in
meeting.
school, so sometimes it's hard to, between getting dinner and getting her off, but
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
6 o'clock it's only once a month, so.
So the question is we can give it a try, in January we set for the whole year. So at that point, we'd have an idea of whether it's something we'd wanna continue or not continue, or just do during the colder months and switch to the summer months. I think there's some flexibility in it,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, good. Summer months, we shouldn't have any date meetings, it should be all night.
14 adopts a local law to amend chapter, 217 entitled Buildings, Construction, Improvements, and Housing Standards of the Riverhead Town Code, Part 6, Blighted Property. You're okay with this one?
Yeah.
Trying to get it done for years, so
I
I'm
like
happy
that.
it's getting done.
All right. 15 adopts a local law to amend chapter 301 entitled Zoning and Land Development of the Riverhead Town Code, Article,
Good luck.
all right, this is
64.
64, Mortgage and Default Registry. 16 is adopts a local law to add a new chapter, chapter 2, this is gonna kill me, 255 and 225. 225 entitled Environmental Quality Review of the Riverhead Town Code.
Were any changes made to this based on comments at the public hearing, or is this the same as what we went to public hearing on? Jeff?
Jeff, do you wanna come up just to address this?
Cause I know there was a discussion about critical environmental areas, and then there was a reserve. I see it's still in here,
Nice shirt.
where it says critical areas of environmental concern will be designated from time to time by resolution. I don't like that. I think that it should definitely be by a public hearing. I don't think this is ready for adoption. I don't think it should be from time to time. I think critical areas of environmental concern will be designated after a public hearing by resolution of the town board in accordance with, because if you're gonna change somebody's designation from just, you could build whatever you want, to you're a critical environmental area, they should have an opportunity to come and speak to us about it.
I can't speak for, the town attorney's office, who probably should also comment on that, but all, critical environmental areas if they were proposed by resolution, I would assume would be subject to a public hearing.
Prior.
Because I don't think the intent here is to go about, designating new, critical environmental areas, that we only really have one, Peconic estuary, and it was just placed in there as sort of a placeholder, that should the board decide that it wanted to add additional critical environmental areas, or if the state did at some point in the future, that all critical environmental areas, even under the current secret, are required to be a type 1.
But we don't have any depicted. We don't have a map depicting critical areas, and that's something that was brought up at the public hearing. So it says, critical areas of environmental concern will be designated from time to time by resolution of the town board in accordance with provisions of subdivision 14G of part 617. The following have been designated by the town board as critical areas of environmental concern. And then it says reserved. And then it says type 1 actions. It says, so it doesn't identify any critical areas. So I don't think this is ready for adoption without a map or identifying some critical areas. As you said,
We're not adopting
not at
critical
areas.
areas, we're adopting just a secret
I don't like it.
requirement.
I don't like it with the from time to time. Because we're trying to make legislation so that it makes it perfectly clear so that we can streamline. I mean, that's what you've been saying
That's-
since day one.
I
and
think you're
this-
misinterpreting it, Jody.
Yeah, that's what the point of this is so that if critical areas if something is done, if there is a situation where a critical area we wanna designate it, it still has to go before the public. It
It
would
doesn't
go,
say that in here.
it says by resolution.
Yeah, but-
Critical areas of environmental concern will be designated from time to time by resolution of the
That's
town
not
board.
to circumvent what we already recognize.
No,
as
we don't
critical.
recognize any as
Do-
critical
do you-
right now
Do you
in
think
here.
that wording should be may be designated, maybe, or, I think the intent was that, and again, Bob Cos
It
was,
shouldn't be,
Bob is coming to
you
answer
should
the question,
never
so.
take somebody's property and say, okay, here's a resolution, you know, it's 2:00 town board meeting, we're putting this resolution up, and we're gonna designate this a critical area.
No, it wouldn't, if you're designating something a critical area, that is an action in and of itself.
Doesn't say that in here.
It does.
Where?
Because it says critical areas of environmental concern will be designated from time to time by resolution of the town board.
Right.
In accordance with provision of the subdivision 14G of part 617.
That doesn't say that you have to have
Okay,
a
Bob-
public hearing, and
Bob,
then
would you-
a resolution will be adopted.
Bob, would you just come up, we're just trying to address something. We are-
You just take your time, it's okay.
We are discussing the, moving forward with the adoption of a local law to amend the secret.
Right.
And one of the areas is the portion of this, which is the, critical.
Yep.
Right, so in order for, and Jody's question is this too vague? And how would the town go about declaring something a critical environmental area in the town? What is the process for something to be designated that?
We'd have to have a public hearing.
Okay, so you'd come up with a resolution if we were to deem
We'd
something.
have to have a study, we'd have to have an analysis, we'd have to have some justification for determining that an area is a critical environmental area. There'd be a public hearing, we'd hear from the public, and then there would be an adopt through that public hearing process.
And all that process
That's
would,
in-
but
that's
all
in the
that
secret
process
code.
would do that you're talking about was saying, we now identify this as a critical environmental area in the town of Riverhead. That would be what that portion does. And then once that's done, then it would implement through this process, is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Procedurally, you can't just pass a resolution and declare something a critical environmental area.
Right.
So by statute,
By
by
law, you can't do that?
By that section of the secret statute.
It doesn't say that.
Well, it says by the secret statute, you have to do it in accordance with the, says
So
that the.
subdivision 14G of part 617
Correct.
is what says that you have to have a public hearing to designate it as a
It sets
critical
forth the
area?
process by which you have to do it. You just can't wave a magic wand one day and say tomorrow, this is a critical environmental area. You can't do that. By that statute, you're by that section of the, secret statute.
Okay, can somebody send me that section of the
Sure.
statute, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't like the from time to time. I mean,
Well, that's-
critical areas of environmental
talking
concern
about just what we
will
just
be
talked about.
designated by resolution of the town board in accordance with provisions. I mean, just, I wouldn't say from time to time, it just,
You don't like that verbiage, I understand that, but I guess if you correlate this with the law, the secret law, I guess it makes a little more sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, then
it's
you
just
wouldn't
that
need
we're
from time to time.
We're constrained
Well,
by.
another time, we may wanna designate something as critical.
there's nothing in,
Maybe-
from what I'm
maybe
hearing,
When the offshore drilling starts and all the oil comes up on Indian Island, we might have to make that a critical area.
right, but we could do that anyway by public hearing, according to statute 617G, at any time, correct?
Right, but then they wouldn't
But there's
fall
a
under this,
process.
they wouldn't fall under this, resolution. Because it's just saying, if something is a critical area, then it would fall within these guidelines.
Okay, so if we get an application
What this is saying is that.
that we don't
we're-
like,
Okay.
if we get an application that we don't like, and we go, this is time to time, so we're gonna designate this a critical area, and then we go through the public hearings and we put up a resolution and designate it a critical area. While an application has already started through the process and we haven't designated it a critical area yet, are we going to say, okay, you've had an application, it's been in here for 3 years, we think we're gonna designate it a critical area and we're gonna put it through a type 1 action?
Well, that's a question that for you guys to ask, if
Well,
you
that's
as
what I'm
town board are
asking.
gonna do that.
So
but I
you're
mean-
saying that
but
we
I-
can do that if an
Well-
application has been,
Well, I'm not saying you can do that and stop a project. What I'm saying is that you still have to go through the process that secret says you have to go through. You just can't wave a magic wand and make a critical environmental area something tomorrow. And there are other implications of critical environmental areas. When you designate something a critical environmental area, if there's 2 projects located within that critical environmental area, they have to be studied cumulatively. There's other things that happen. But this is just saying that this is keeping open, it's a placeholder. It says, in the future, if you ever decide that you wanna designate something a critical environmental area, you're allowing it under your statute to be done, provided it's in accordance with the secret statute, that particular section of the secret regs.
Right, it doesn't.
That's what it's saying.
Yeah, it doesn't prohibit.
but why wouldn't we identify critical areas right now?
You could, if you wanted to.
Why wouldn't we?
You can at
Anytime in,
You
yeah.
could do that without the
That you
statute.
want
Yeah.
to
You
go
could
through
do that,
this
you could do
process
that by law
without-
now.
Without any of this
before the board.
You could do it under the state legislation if you wanted to. Other towns do have CEAs designated.
And the state has frequently done that.
Correct.
But there has been none identified within the town of Riverhead at this time that we consider a critical area.
Well, the state has the Conoco estuary.
Right, Conoco estuary, but I mean, there's nothing that we're not saying, okay, we have a bit of, shoreline on the sound that we consider a critical area, and we would like to study it and designate it as such. We have not, there's been nothing brought forth from the planning board, from, bless you, from any other entity within the town that says, this is an area of concern to us, and we would like to have it studied to be entered in as a critical area. It just, we don't have anything in that, at that place right now.
But you're saying that we're already covered under that, under the state law. So anytime we could designate anything as a critical area without this even being in this.
That's correct, but anytime you have an application that is, significantly contiguous to or within a critical area, you are a type 1 action by de facto. So all this was doing was identifying that and then adding to it that this board has the ability to designate that as it goes through the process of forming the designation. So that if it is successful and it is designated as a critical environmental area, then you're a type 1 action if you're adjacent to it.
But it doesn't mean you can't develop it, it doesn't stymie the development, you just need to go through the complete process.
And if there were an application before the board prior to it being designated a critical environmental area, that application and its date would take precedence in the chronology of the designation, and that application would have already been reviewed under SECRA based on the date of its application. So you don't then stop it by saying it's a critical environmental area and we're going to handicap the application, because no, that's already been applied for some development and it's already been subject to SECRA. And if there were environmental sensitive areas within those boundaries, they're gonna be studied anyway, even if it's not designated officially as a critical area. It may turn out that from that study it becomes a critical area because you've identified some, unusual wildlife or something of significant,
Finds, stuff like that.
archaeological finds. But that application does not get stopped, that SECRA process continues, mitigation plans could be proposed, but as a result of that, you may find that surrounding areas might be considered in the future to be identified as a critical environmental area. So adjacent properties to that, as they're developed, are already pre-noticed. By the way, we found,
I think that's what actually happened in Southampton, I think there were
Exactly
some
what happened.
archaeological things that they found in when they was doing something, and then they designated that as a critical area moving forward.
yes.
So, it also says in here, under 225(8)(b), it says, if an EIS is required, environmental impact statement is required, the lead agency must proceed as provided in sections 8, 9, and 10 of part 617. The draft environmental impact study will normally be prepared by the applicant. If the applicant prepare a draft of an EIS or prepares a draft EIS which is unacceptable to the lead agency may either prepare a draft EIS itself, discontinue further processing of the application until the applicant can provide an acceptable draft EIS, or deem the application abandoned and discontinue review. Is there a time period to where all that has to be done?
Yeah, that's straight out of SECRA. An applicant that submits an EIS, that draft EIS must be deemed complete and acceptable, which means it must meet the scope. And with the scope matching the EIS, saying that, they've done proper traffic analysis, they've done proper groundwater studies, whatever that scope identified and was agreed upon as the outline and the metric that the EIS needed to meet. If all those conditions are met, then the draft is accepted and it's circulated for involved agency review and public review. If they are missing pieces of that, it is deemed unacceptable. It is rejected with a written letter and comments as to what is missing, and then the applicant is required to fill those blanks back in to make it complete. However, if they fail to do that, or they submit and it's still deemed inadequate, it continues to go back, and there are timeframes between the review and the applicant's response to those comments. We must review, I think it's within 45 days, we have to either deem it complete or incomplete and advise them in written form. Sometimes those timeframes are expanded, but they are only expanded when the lead agency and the applicant have a written agreement that, yes, we need more time
it's by
to
mutual
review
agreement.
it. You get a 900-page EIS, obviously you need more time to pick through it. Or if the missing pieces require additional research, then you advise the applicant. You know, there's some flexibility even in the state code. So yes, there are timeframes. Nobody can just sit and shelve it and say, oh, I'll look at it when I get to it. We have 45 days to respond.
I'm talking about the application being abandoned and discontinue review. I'm saying, is there a time?
If applicants do not respond in writing to the comments, boards have been known to, that you are allowed to consider that application has been non-responsive. They never responded, they didn't respond in writing, it's considered abandoned.
Okay, so it says, if based on review of the EAF, the environmental assessment form, and other information, the lead agency determines that the proposed action may be environmental significant, then an environmental impact statement must be prepared. And these environmental impact statements could cost thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases, which is okay. I mean, if it's an environmental area that we're concerned about, then that makes sense, but is there a process between the EAF and declaring that an EIS is needed? Is there a public hearing? When is the scoping document prepared? I mean, in my opinion, it should say in here, a scoping document would be prepared and then an EIS would have to be prepared. Because a lot of times what happens is that it's a moving target. So where we'll say, prepare an EIS and we wanna study traffic and this, and then they do that, and then we say, okay, now we wanna study a fence and this and this. Okay, you did that, now we wanna study this and this and this.
So, when the part 3 of the EAF is prepared, that's the determination of significance. As the review of type 1 action is going through the process, if any of the items, water, wastewater, traffic, etc., may result in a moderate or significant impact potential, that automatically on the type 1 triggers an EIS. Now you can streamline that EIS to simply that category, or it can be expanded upon depending upon the development. Once that determination of significance is identified, then an EIS is required. The applicant is notified and they must submit a draft scope, because the comments that come from the reviewer must identify why you have triggered a potentially significant impact. So that's identified in writing. What we're doing here is we're requiring a formal scoping session to be held, meaning there'll be a written final scope at the end of the process. So both the lead agency and the applicant are very clear as to what's required. In the state requirements, scoping is optional. We have made it mandatory. In the future, formal scoping in January of 2019, the state secret regulations will also require formal scoping sessions, so that it doesn't just go into this circular
Abyss.
Exactly.
So it has been addressed, and that is one of the changes in January that we'll.
You knew that?
And one of the other changes in January will be that a voluntary EIS will no longer be accepted. So there'll no longer be these, hey, I'm gonna give you a voluntary EIS and just stamp it approved. No, we're going through the entire secret
That's a
process
good
if
thing.
you're a type one and designated in need of an EIS.
So it would be the town's representative that would prepare the EIS and the applicant would pay for it?
The town has the option to either prepare the EIS itself or have the applicant prepare the EIS.
And I believe it's the applicant who has the first choice on that.
Pardon?
It's the applicant who has the choice on the
Yeah,
preparation
yes,
first,
yes.
so they have first choice on which
And
way.
then when it
that
comes to the fees, the
It can be for
lead
review.
agency can either charge for the review or they can charge for the preparation, but you cannot charge for both.
Correct.
Okay, so you'll send me that statute, right, of
Yep.
the,
I'd rather just pay you to do it.
No, you wanna just review it almost.
Just wanna read them. Believe me, they're a struggle enough to
You might as well just do it.
to read it. It's too much typing.
All right, any other questions on this one?
No, thank you for your work on that.
Okay,
And everyone is aware of that other change with the type two,
for the,
for the solar.
solar.
Okay.
Do you know about that one, Jody?
but what?
For the solar?
I
You wanna
don't know.
just review that question?
So in January of 2019, the state secret regulations will change, and solar facilities that are proposed in any area that is zoned for that use, the state wants to designate a type 2 action, but our codes locally would reflect that they are an automatic type 1. So they would need to go through at least a formal CEQA process with regard to the full environmental assessment form and potentially EISs.
Right, because I appeared before the Code Revision Committee not too long ago, saying that if there was a 100 acres of tree clearing in order to provide for solar panels, I want the code changed, that they can't just go out and clear 100 acres of trees to put in solar panels, that there are other sites that might be more conducive to that,
So if this local law is adopted prior to January 1st, you'll be able to do that.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Still a nice shirt.
Did you wanna, come on, okay,
You can keep it in, I spoke to Anne Marie,
okay.
and she said that,
This is for the accident
Right.
retrieval, yeah,
she said the resolution says that she's going to write the contract,
okay,
and that since they're the sole bidder, she's allowed to adjust the price up and down,
okay,
okay?
very
The
good.
contract will be adjusted, that's
Yep.
the resolution.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so 17 we're up to.
Yes, ma'am.
Approves the chapter 255 application of the Titan Run Corporation. This is a 5K obstacle race entitled the Titan Run, October 13th, 2018. Number 18 is a
So I guess they came up, because I thought Ray was gonna get back to us with a fee that he was gonna charge for these type of events.
I do not know
When
what the
she was here-
fee is on this one. Did we get the fee on this one? Is Laura out this week?
Yes.
Yes, that's part of the. She'll be back on Tuesday? All right, but we can look. What was that? Okay, so we will get the
Alright.
information on that.
I like this, it's all gonna be up at EPCAL anyway.
18 approves chapter 255 application of Riverhead Townscape Inc., Riverhead Country Fair, Sunday, October 7th, 2018. Lucky thing you got that one in.
Well, it's been longing around for the last 3 weeks.
Tara about it the other day.
19 is approves chapter 255 application of Darkside Productions Inc., Haunted House Walk, September 28th, 2018 through November 3rd, 2018.
Bet they got that one in.
Yeah, I know, right? 20 is approved the chapter 255 application of Garden of Eve LLC, Long Island Garden Festival, September 15th and 16th, 2018.
They worked out everything with the
Yeah, well-
police?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they
Did
were,
yeah,
they,
because I know, I helped her 2 years ago, and then last year it was okay, but then,
The
so I guess you must have
the
been able
chief-
with you, I guess.
the chief did put the numbers together, we sent them to her, she was in agreement to it, and, so.
I'm sure she should be down.
21 is ratifies the approval of a chapter 255 application of Jamesport Fire Department 5K and 10K race, Sunday, August 26, 2018.
That was last week.
Yes, it was. That's ratifies. 22 is ratifies and approves the chapter 255 application of the Long Island Antique Power Association 26th annual tractor show and annual spring, summer, and fall shows. Part of the issue with this, that this is being ratified, is I guess they had submitted one application for all of the events, so this was just to clear that up. 23 is approved chapter 255 application of Long Island Beer Company LLC, halfway to St. Patty's Day, September 15th, 2018.
Is that national holiday?
It is.
It should be if it's
Yeah.
not.
And just so you know, there's a resolution in there to change some of the town board meetings till 6 o'clock.
I saw that, I saw that, good.
24 is approves the chapter 255 application of Manorville Fire Department Brush Truck Training Event, Sunday, September 30th, 2018. That's 24. So 25 is approves the chapter 255 application of the Sierra Club Electric Car Display entitled National Drive Electric Week Car, Sunday, September 16th, 2018.
That was a great event, Southampton had it, that's a good one.
26 is ratifies the approval of the application of fireworks permit of Riverhead Raceway, Inc. for Saturday, September 1st, 2018.
2 days.
And if you didn't see the one that happened this last Saturday night, you should step outside of your houses and, take a look at it, cause it was quite an amazing show.
We watched the whole thing
Yeah.
from the bedroom window.
I know, me too.
Love American style.
I can't wait for them to do it
It was
again.
amazing,
It was
wasn't it?
amazing, they were really good.
Yeah. All right, Diane, we're cutting you off there.
Wait, no, we see it from our
One up
windows.
there.
I saw
Yeah.
fireworks,
everybody.
I saw fireworks once.
Stop it.
27 is, authorizes bow hunting for deer, on town property at EPCAL, Suffolk County Tax Map 600, 135-1-7, 7.33, at 1751 Sound Avenue, Calverton, Suffolk County Tax Map 600-60-1-2, 437 Youngs Avenue, Riverhead, Suffolk County Tax Map number 600-80-2-6.1, Middle Road, Riverhead, Suffolk County Tax Map, 600-80-2-10.1 from October 1st, 2018 to December 22nd, 2018 inclusive. Why did it not go to the end of the month? Is that just for the holidays, or
That's
is that the reason for that?
yeah, that's,
That's what the
State,
season is.
it's the
Yeah,
state.
Is that what the
C
season-
sets the season, so.
Okay.
we're still waiting on the fiscal, right? Yes. Well,
Yeah,
I should
there
prob-
might be a couple extra signs they have to.
Well, they're gonna look at, that, Chris is going down this weekend just to
Right.
see if he can reposition some of the signs. I mean, just 'cause the thing is longer, the entrances are the entrances.
Right.
You know, so I don't think we really need
For the
any more
bow
signs, I think just maybe repositioning some of them.
Yeah,
And I think they were going to meet with your committee also, for the Alternative Transportation Committee with the bike path there.
Yeah, we're
'cause
gonna,
think
I
they're
just called
entering
for a
some
meeting of
different-
the wildlife, and I'm gonna invite all the strands to come in if they have a better idea where to put these signs.
Yeah,
Okay.
we discussed it at our last meeting, and the All Trans Committee thought it worked out very well with hunting in the same season as
Yeah,
the bow
but
hunting.
then George Bartlett comes in and he wants
No,
the wildlife to come to their meeting, I said, no, well, have them come to our meeting.
anyway, there was no objection from the Alternative Transportation Committee to have the hunting, the bow hunting at the same time as the trails open, and they were happy that the trail remained open, cause in previous years it had been closed.
Oh, I don't think it was anything about whether they were for or against it, I think it
No, I
was
think it
just
was
the signs.
positioning of the signs,
Yes,
right.
if people are entering in different
Exactly right.
places.
And the hunters were respectful for the most part, as far as not driving on the trail.
Grants authorization to SCSC Acquisition New York, Inc., Altice USA, to construct and install fiber optic broadband infrastructure at 2 locations.
Oh, yeah?
I haven't seen this one before.
So,
both of them on town right
Yeah, I
away.
was gonna say,
One's on
okay.
Fresh Pond and one's on Church Lane.
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
they should, you know what, they do a really lousy job in patching the roads after they get through with, laying their,
I don't think Geo gives them their money, their
no, I
deposit
mean,
back on the road
look at
opening.
Osborne Avenue still, from, PSE&G and other roads throughout our town, and they come back and, but, I don't know that we have a bond for them. I know that years ago, when the highway superintendent and I had sat down with PSE&G, they were taking bonds, so I don't know if there's expected to be a bond for this, but if there's not, I think there should be, because if they don't repair the road right, then we have to have that option
I think
to
at this point, they
fix it
put,
right.
They need a Riverhead
They need an
Riverhead
opening
Highway
permit.
opening permit prior to actual construction and installation,
and
to
they're,
relocate,
I know,
Right.
but there's no bond.
no accountability to hold them to come back.
Right,
No, I get it. But I'm just wondering with the,
We
what
have it
what
with
our
PSE&G.
permit, what our permit says, so we'll look into that, John, and then we can get back to everybody on that.
My understanding that Mike Zalewski, was part of the meeting to locate these two, what they call remote optical fiber boxes. And he was comfortable with the location. They have to come to him for the highway opening permit. And my understanding is he's going to require a deposit or some sort of security.
Okay.
That was what I understood,
Right.
but you clarify that, John, with Mike, because he was comfortable with the location.
Okay,
They physically went out and they showed him where they're gonna put the two boxes
okay.
and cabinets.
but we
That's
have to
with,
have,
Larry.
we have to have some sort of agreement with them that they're going to repair the roads and leave them in the same state that they.
The highway permit with it.
Yeah, the highway permit,
Opening permit requires that, I don't know if you've
I
seen
know.
the permit.
And so, and,
It's extensive, it requires certain things to be signed by the applicant as far as repair.
Oh, yeah.
And what they're getting permission to do.
so we'll get the copies of that from, John will get that
I'll give you a
from,
copy of the highway opening permit if you wanna look at
And then
what
we
that says.
inspect it to make sure it says corrected, right, ever since we had that debacle on Elton and Roanoke,
so you'll share the permit with everybody?
The road, I'll give you a blank road
Yes.
opening permit so you can see what it says.
Okay,
yeah, we changed it a couple years ago with PSE&G, I just wanna make sure it applies to Altus too, seeing as they've never, it's always been Cablevision, now it's Altus.
okay, 29 is authorized notice to bidders, installation of water mains and apertures, well bridge care center.
Appurtenances.
Appurtenances, sorry. Well Bridge Care Center, Riverhead Water District, project number, 1554. 30 is sets forth the sense of the Riverhead Town Board and memorialize opposition to offshore oil and gas drilling and exploration. Appoints members to the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee.
This one changes, we had a member from the library that was elected, Kerry McMullen Smith. But she never came, she always sent somebody in her place, and it became an issue with voting power when she was here, so to make it correct, the person that comes in her place, Kerry's resigning, and the
Okay.
person that comes in her place will be the appointed board member
Okay,
for voting power,
okay.
Laura Lucida.
Oh, I know Laura.
And the next one is amends the guidelines for the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. Oh, so
Right.
they finally got them all through, huh?
Yeah,
Is there a lot of voting?
well, at the meetings,
They run a
yes.
tight meeting.
There is, she runs a, meeting like
Is Connie?
none other, Joe Packard,
Oh, Lord.
and, she does a good job.
Sure she did.
But it's by the book, and there was some things that needed to be tweaked and tightened up here in the guidelines, so, this will amend it and bring it more up to date.
Thank you, Bill.
Where's the resolution for the water district to apply for that grant for $3 million?
Has Dawn completed that?
It's completed and it's.
Well,
I never received the resolution, I mean, obviously the board can still take it and put it on the agenda for Wednesday, to receive it between now and then. I just haven't received anything from Dawn yet. I asked the board to get that this morning. Obviously, once I get it, you'll all see it. I just haven't received it. I mean, we're all,
I mean, I don't think we're gonna turn down a grant application if it comes through, we've taken those before, but if it's not.
I was told you did decline it, but,
Who did you tell who said I declined it?
well, I was told that several people from the water district, including the water district superintendent, had told you that he wanted to apply for this grant and that you declined.
Well, that's absolutely not true, so I don't know where you're getting that information from.
I
was
told you
told
where I
the
got
same
it from.
thing.
I
You were
don't
told
know.
the same thing?
That is absolutely not true, so I don't know who said that.
Nice. Well, there it is, on record.
I am fully in support of applying for any grants that come into the town, especially for work that we're planning on doing.
Oh, so here it is. Okay. Showed up.
Where did that come from?
Bill just got,
Oh, all right.
this one goes.
So this one authorizes the Community Development Department to apply for a New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, WIIA grant for infrastructure improvements to the Riverhead Water District. I
It's
find
for $3 million grant for magnesium removal, which
Right,
we most definitely need.
And a 40% match from the town, so
Yeah.
that's fine.
And we were talking earlier today, which was a good conversation about New York's clean coast economy and offshore drilling and all that, and all that, now I'm thinking of Northville, and we were at the public hearing a few months back about the addition of adding vegetable oils, statement mandate to lessen the carbon imprint of these trucks, to add 5% into the tanks to, where is that resolution? Did we ever, that just went to the wayside, we didn't vote on that yet?
Which one is,
We had the public hearing on it, that was for, Northville.
Right, well, to add the vegetable oil pipeline to.
is this for your, for the biofuel?
Biofuel.
Oh, biofuel, yes, it's still in, planning,
Cause we left it open for comment, like, for
They
120
resubmitted.
days so far.
They
They resubmitted the
resubmitted and
special
they
application.
completed the application where it was kind of pretty much incomplete when they first submitted it.
Okay.
So they've redone it and it's been resubmitted, and we were talking to department head on Monday.
Yeah, they weren't ready to come in, it was,
Right,
we thought they
but
were
it-
gonna come back for a work session today from URT, but they were, planning here was not, ready to put them on for a work session again, so they'll be on the next work session, next Thursday.
So the public hearing is, we have to go back to another
Well,
public hearing?
well, unless you choose to, but there were questions about the application and then the other fuels that they were they were
Added the
occurring in the
diesel
special.
fuel and-
Because I guess when they came to the first work session here, they did not include other fuel products.
Right.
And so the question then
Thank you.
became, you know, what was the application, that was brought up at the public hearing. So then it went back from planning and URT, they were discussing it back and forth, and they've amended their application, to include just to meet, I guess, the state statute, but they'll come back and present that to us, at the next work session, and then they can move forward with that. Is this another one, or this is still the same?
No, that's the same one, we
Same
just
one,
got copies.
okay.
So there was a lot of public comment, so the people that came to the public hearing and expressed comments that the application was incomplete, has the application been sent to those people?
The application has not been presented to the board yet, so we were thinking that it would be presented to the board today, they were unprepared to do that. It'll be presented to the board, and then the board can decide whether they want to hold another public open session for people to comment, or if we feel that was addressed the public comments, and whether the application will be a new application, or to move it forward and allow them to come and
We probably
comment on the
have to see
resolution.
the new application first to decide whether we wanna go back to open it up again or not for a public hearing.
Okay.
It probably should be, but I wanna see the application.
I don't know
first
that
myself.
is the recommendation at the planning board at this time, but we'll see when they present to us, so. Alright, so can I have a first and second to, go into executive session for matters leading to the discipline of an employee, discussions regarding a bid award, and Town of Riverhead versus Walter Gabrielson.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Into executive.
Can the town board